Ugh, gosh. Happy Monday, I guess. I don't want to start off the morning with bad news, with sad news, with tragic news, but here we are as we get it rolling at 6:05. This weekend, unfortunately, in the region was highlighted by violence, was highlighted by, and by the way, on both sides of the state line, highlighted by gunfire, highlighted by knife fights even. It was highlighted by people continuing to kill each other. That's what this weekend was highlighted by in Kansas City. I mean, Chiefs season can't get here soon enough, my goodness. And I don't really want to be talking about this, but we do a 4-hour show on Kansas City for the most part. So here we are on a Monday morning. So we'll start off with, where do we want to start? We got 3 options here. Start off with Saturday night. 4 men sent to the hospital, suspect in custody following a shooting downtown. This was at 1501 Grand. Gunshots took place just south of that location Saturday night, 11:39 is when it took place. Cops showed up, responded to the scene, located 4 shooting victims in the area of 16th and Grand.
Mm-hmm.
Suspect of interest was identified and taken into custody for that, John, right?
Right, the 15th and Grand location, the officers were kind of working in that area and heard the gunshots about a block away to the south.
Okay, so
responded from that point.
So that's late on Saturday, but it's not that late.
No, it was like, not even 6, I don't think. Or no, that was the one that was last night.
11:30 at night on Saturday.
Was the later one.
But how many people are out? And that's the thing, can't even keep track of these damn shootings around here anymore.
Yeah,
Jeez.
unfortunately.
So this is 11:30 on Saturday night, 15th and Grand. Like when I go to a concert at T-Mobile, I like to park right just north of there in that area, 15th and Grand. That's my go-to spot for parking. That could be you coming out of a concert on a Saturday night. That could be you, by the way, coming out of a Royals game in a couple of years down in the East Village.
Yeah, I think they had rodeo down there Saturday night.
Oh, that's right, they did.
Yeah, PBR.
I thought about taking Claire down there, and then we scratched that since we had the Mets game on Thursday. That's right. They had the PBR all weekend. So that could have been you coming out of the PBR, coming out of a concert, coming out of some events. It's not like this is 3 in the morning. We're talking 11:30 at night. So that's Saturday night. And then let's fast forward to Sunday morning on the other side of state line. A Fairway police officer, the latest we have here, by the way, is remaining in critical condition. Suspect shot and killed by officers after an exchange of gunfire yesterday morning, 7:30 a.m. Quick Trip 95th and I-35 in Lenexa. Suspect driving the vehicle struck a Lenexa Police Patrol car, left the scene per Lenexa Police. Officers pursued the suspect northbound I-35 to Lamar in Mission, and 2 suspects then ran into the Quick Trip on Lamar. Authorities from multiple agencies went to arrest the suspect inside the Quick Trip. The officers and the suspects exchanged gunfire as police attempted to make contact. 7:30 on a Sunday in Mission. Hey, this is you getting your morning cup of coffee yesterday. Slow Sunday morning. Maybe you're going to be heading off to church in an hour, but, the kids aren't up yet, so I'll go grab a cup of Joe at Quick Trip. Whoa, bang, bang, bang. I mean, are you kidding me? This is Mission. A male suspect identified as Shannon Wayne Marshall shot and killed in the exchange. Marshall's was 40, hailed from Ashland City, Tennessee. The other suspect, 32-year-old Andrea Cothran, also of Tennessee, taken into custody unharmed, booked into the Johnson County Adult Detention Center, being held on no bond. So that's yesterday morning. And let's fast forward to last night. This is about 5:45 last night, 20th and Main, right in the heart of the crossroads. Once again, not a place in town where you would think that we'd be talking about violence and homicides, but here we are. Kansas City police investigating a homicide reported Sunday evening in the crossroads near downtown. This writes the Kansas City Star. 5:45 p.m., police called to the scene of a cutting on the bridge near 20th and Main. The witness who called police said it appeared 2 people got into a physical fight on the west sidewalk on the bridge over the railroad tracks when one of the people, who appeared to be a male, hit the other with an unknown object. The victim, who also was a male, but whose name has not yet been released, was unresponsive when help arrived and later died at the hospital. So here you've got 3 murders in the Kansas City area or in Kansas City proper. 2 of them were over the weekend, really from Saturday night to Sunday night, stole the headlines. And none of them are in places where typically we'd say, oh, okay, there's another homicide in this part of town. You got 15th and Grand downtown. You've got Mission, Kansas, and you've got 20th and Main in the heart of the crossroads. For 3 years, and this is not something I ever wanted to be right on, but for 3 years on this show, 3.5 at this point, we've talked about how if you allow lawlessness, if you allow and you have the perception that you are soft on crime, and it will permeate other parts of the region. It may be worse in certain parts of town, but it will expand. It will grow. Crime, for the most part, does not care about a state line or state line road. And it will get worse in places like the crossroads and downtown and skip across state line. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening here in Kansas City in a year that has had the most number of homicides on record year to date, with no end in sight. And for those of you who have gone along with this for 3.5 years, for those of you who have just accepted the fact that, cops are bad and maybe those people have a point and maybe we don't need cops. Maybe we just need some social workers to talk people off the ledge. Well, you reap what you sow, and this is what you're going to continue to see happen. And there's no evidence to suggest it's going to get better. 15th and Grand, 20th and Main, and Mission, Kansas. If I told you that we would have murders in 3 parts of Kansas City over the weekend, and I gave you those 3 options, and those are the 3 places they were going to be, at a Quick Trip in Mission, 15th and Grand, and 20th and Main. And by the way, all between 5:30 and 11:30 at night. None of them at 3 a.m., John. What would you say? Oh, would you say, that seems probable? No, you wouldn't.
No, and I would point out that one of the homicides is by a knife, so not really affected by any gun control.
Well, great point as well. Jeez, where are the moms demand knife control? Mm-hmm. Where are they at? No one's hurt? No? Okay. I'm just making sure they haven't started a new spin-off group yet. You look at this and you have to come to a simple conclusion. I was talking to somebody in local law enforcement last night as we were going through this story, and they said, Pete, this is exactly what we thought would happen. Exactly what we told you 3 years ago is probably going to happen. You are going to end up in a situation where the violence was going to continue to extend to other parts of town beyond what you would consider the traditional high crime areas of Kansas City. That's always how it goes. As people get more brazen, more bold, they don't care what part of town they're in anymore. They don't care if they've crossed over a state line. They just don't care. And now you got people dying in places that you wouldn't typically expect people to be getting killed. And, local media is kind of talking about it, but, not nearly enough. Kansas City Star doesn't even have it as a headline piece this morning. 913-408-7710. I mean, how many of you go to a Quick Trip on a Saturday or a Sunday morning in a town like Mission? And imagine you walk in there and suddenly a gunfight erupts between criminals and law enforcement. Enough is enough. And by the way, there's a group in town that needs to really start standing up and growing some, let's just put it this way. They got to stand up before I get myself in trouble. I'll tell you who that group is because you might be part of that group. Coming up next as we kick it off on a Monday morning, Pete Mundo on KCMO. It is time for the Kansas City business community to step up, grow a pair, and demand serious change at City Hall. I mean, that's the conclusion that I keep coming to after another violent weekend in Kansas City and, not in the places that you would expect. Like this morning, 71 Highway North, 20th Street, there was a homicide. 2 teenagers were shot by a passing vehicle. One is in critical condition, one has died. And I'm not saying one is worse than the other, but okay, that part of town is where you would be more likely to expect homicides to have taken place over the weekend. But we've got one at 15th and Grand from Saturday night, 11:30. Then we've got Sunday morning, yesterday morning, a quick trip in Mission. Shootout takes place between cops and criminals. And then last night, 5:30 in the afternoon, 20th and Main and the Crossroads. By the way, the streetcar was shut down for a little bit. So I don't know how anyone got around this town with the streetcar being shut down, but we'll worry about that another time. So the Kansas City business community at large has got to step up, whether it's to the Chamber of Commerce or any other organization, step up and demand that your city council start supporting its law enforcement, doing whatever it takes to hire 300 cops as soon as possible. That's what they're short. That's what's got to happen. If that does not happen, there is little to suggest this problem is going to get any better anytime soon. And there's every reason to believe that Kansas City is going to break its record for homicides this year of 179 that came down in 2020, which was a horrible year. Jack is in Kansas City. Hey, Jack, you're on KCMO. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. It's Chuck. I was calling, you hit the nail on the head, and our city leaders they've attacked the police department, they've attacked, and this goes for the county and all the way up to the federal government. You look back a few years ago, everybody wants to focus on what is not the issue, which is the firearm or the weapon that's being used versus the person that's behind it, pulling the trigger or thrusting this forward. Mm-hmm. Gene Peters Baker locally, our city council, nationally, many members of Congress have just openly declared war on our police. And additionally, they seek to come up with common sense ideas to try and address crime and want to make new laws to try and institute gun control rather than using the very effective laws that we currently have on the books, yet they refuse to follow the law to provide the protections that they're sworn by their office and that they promised the voters in these various precincts and across the country that they do.
Yep. And they haven't done the job there, Chuck. You're right. And, we know, here's the thing, and you know this, Chuck, and good call, good way to start the morning on KCMO. You know that the elected leaders, some of them are obviously reelected after the city council races in Kansas City. Those who are reelected are not going to do anything. They're just not. They might talk gun control. They might, say all the right things. Yeah, we support the police. Like some of your reelected council members up north. You know who they are. And then you have a lot of people who genuinely don't want to see more cops on the streets, who genuinely still believe, despite 3.5 years of data to suggest less cops make cities more dangerous, and soft on crime approaches from prosecutors make cities more dangerous. Despite the overwhelming data, they don't care. They've got a political agenda they're looking to achieve. For whatever reason, whatever their motive is, at this point, there's no data to back up what they push for. So now you need organizations like the Chamber of Commerce. Now, some of you are asking on the text line if the Chamber called for less police. No, the Chamber didn't advocate for less police or anything like that. But the Chamber's silence is telling. Chamber of Commerce having no backbone and not calling out just terrible policy that is now resulting. It's one thing, if the crime's in parts of town where the Chamber of Commerce, let's be honest, doesn't do a lot of business. Not saying that's right, but, at least their silence, not that it's ever understandable, but the silence is not having an enormous impact on them. Where are the businesses outside of 15th and Grand and 20th and Main who have homicides taking place outside of their stores, outside of their businesses? Where are they? Where's the Chamber to stand up for those businesses and say enough's enough, Kansas City? Enough. And stop with this local control nonsense as if that somehow is going to make any difference. I saw this over the weekend. It was in the Starland News. Headline, in second term, Mayor Lucas says he'll help get City Hall out of entrepreneurs' ways. Mayor Lucas saying, I think this will probably be the most pro-business council we've ever had. And by pro-business, I mean pro-small business. We realize there are thousands of jobs in Kansas City, thousands of new jobs that will grow and build a future for this city. And they're not in gigantic buildings or ones that would splash on the cover of the newspaper. Yeah, come open up your small business here at 20th and Main. And if you're lucky, the homicides will only happen, Sunday nights when you closed. Come on in. Let's go, baby.
Boom, boom, boom.
Sounds like a great time. Outstanding pitch to small businesses around town. Any small business that's considering opening up in Kansas City is probably going to wonder, what are the odds somebody's getting knifed outside my location? What are the odds two guys are getting into an altercation on a Saturday night, especially if you got a restaurant or a bar in town, and you got to worry about, a shooting happening? Too many options in this climate, too many options in this world, in this city, to pigeonhole yourself into this kind of an environment right now. You want to talk about being pro-small business? Get the cops hired and clean up the damn streets, for crying out loud. You now have these things happening in the hubs, the restaurant hubs of town, downtown Crossroads. And you know what else? Looking out on this past weekend, if I'm John Sherman, owner of the Royals, I put down my deposit on North KC. That's what I did over the weekend if I was John Sherman. Coming up, speaking of sports, U.S. women's soccer team lost. That's really a shame, isn't it? Woo! We'll get to the details next. The U.S. women's national soccer team gave you an outstanding example of how socialism does not work. It doesn't work in real life, and it doesn't work in sports. Good morning. Happy Monday, 6:35 as we get it rolling on KCMO. I didn't even realize that the Women's World Cup was still happening, but apparently it was over the weekend, and I didn't watch a minute, John, but I know Team USA lost to Sweden, if I have this correct, in the round of 16 on penalty kicks. Did I get that all right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Wow, look at me.
Yeah, it turns out that the U.S. Women's Political Action Committee is not very competitive in the World Cup tournament this year.
Yeah.
Who knew?
All their money's now going to Uncle Joe.
Come on, man.
That's where it's going.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
You can practice those penalty shots,
Yeah. Well, what a shame, too, that Megan Rapinoe, how sad is this?
Oh, is that the dude with the blue hair?
Yes, correct.
Dresses like he's in the band The Killers.
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay. Megan Rapinoe missing one of the key penalty kicks to send Team USA home.
Rapinoe, right foots it over the bar.
Oh, what a shame. Over the bar. Boy, that's from ESPN. That's too bad.
All they had to do is make one of the last two. She was the fourth shot.
Oh.
So all they had to do is make the fourth or fifth one, and they would have won.
Oh, gosh. And excuse me, that was Fox, not ESPN. Okay, so they had to make one. So if she had made one, they would have had to make just one more to win.
If she would have made it, they would have won.
Oh, they would have won?
Yeah.
Gosh, that makes it even better. Oh, Megan Rapinoe, the most, gosh. Despisable, prominent American athlete today. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's just ungrateful to be an American when it comes to U.S. athletes? There's Megan Rapinoe, then there's a huge gap to everybody else. She has just been insufferable since she's been on the national and world stage. It's amazing how playing the victim card while not being a victim can be so lucrative for so many, and Megan Rapinoe is a quintessential example of that very thing. So they got knocked out after winning back-to-back World Cups, and they were heavily favored, right? Once again, Mark, you know the betting, right?
Oh, they were.
They were heavily favored to win again, and now they're out.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you place any bets on them, Mark?
I did. They boosted it from minus 170 to plus 100. So I lost.
Okay, so you boost. Okay, I got it. So you made a little wager there, but it's because they gave you very good odds.
Yeah, I could have gone $5 to win 10, and it didn't work out.
Okay, because if that had not been the case, if you had just bet on the U.S. women's national team to win, we would have had a problem here.
No.
but because you did it because you got better odds, I'll accept it.
Thank you.
So you can stay show member for now. But socialism doesn't work, and this is a prime example of why. Well, they changed the way the U.S. women's national team gets paid. They changed this last year, but they've been trying to get more money into women's soccer. And as a result, what they're doing now is they are splitting the men's earnings and the women's earnings between both teams. So let's go through this math together. I know it's early on a Monday, but just follow me here. When the U.S. men's national team reached the knockout stage of the World Cup in November, it earned $13 million. Half of that went to the women's team for doing nothing. They got half that monies. And this was written by Outkick, by the way. They had a very good article at Outkick.com. Now, the U.S. women's national team won the World Cup in 2015 and 2019. Combined, those wins earned them $6 million. So the men's team reached the round of 16, and it made, think about this, more than double what the women's team made for winning the World Cup each of the last two times. So now FIFA's pushing back, and FIFA's like, hey, get us more money. Women need more money. And it's like, okay, so the prize pool for this year's Women's World Cup was $142 million. Of that, $10.5 million goes to the winning team. Oh, that sounds pretty good, right? Well, the men have a massive pool because the men's sport is far more popular on the world stage. That's just how it goes. The prize for the men was $440 million, with $42 million going to champion Argentina. So even if the women's national team this year won the World Cup, which did not happen, they would have earned $10.5 million, and that still would have been $2.5 million less than the men earned back in November just for getting to the knockout round. So this year, because they got bounced in the round of 16, the women's team just received $3.3 million for their performance. So the total prize for U.S. soccer, between the men making $13 million and the women making $3.3 million, is a grand total of $16.3 million. That will be split evenly between the men and the women. The men's team earned 80% of that money, but they're only getting 50%. If I'm on the men's team, I'm ticked off. You've got a small window as a professional athlete, and you have to split the money unfairly with the women's team. And by the way, the women's team, were they less hungry this year? Were they overrated this year? They were favored to win the World Cup. But you know what? No surprise, when you're cashing the check from somebody else, you're not as hungry. You're not as likely to compete. You're not going to maybe want it as much. And it seems pretty obvious their performance reflected that. They didn't score a single goal in their final two World Cup matches. Not one. I don't watch a lot of soccer. I know not a lot of goals are scored, but when you're the favorites to win the World Cup, as the Team USA women were, and you don't score a goal in your last two games, it's not a great sign. But then after the loss, Megan Rapinoe, who, by the way, it's very difficult to get a large part of America to root against your team on the world stage, but this Women's World Cup team managed to do it. Megan Rapinoe was asked about her favorite part of this run since she's expected to hang him up after this World Cup. And here's what she had to say.
Is there a memory that stands out to you right now in this moment?
I mean, probably equal pay chance after the final. And I think, they were saying equal pay, but could have been saying a lot of things. I think this team has always fought for so much more, and that's been the most rewarding part for me, of course, playing in World Cups and winning championships and doing all that. But, to know that we've used our really special talent to do something, that's really changed the world forever. I think that means the most to me. And, the players in this locker room here, they're just getting started. And, to all the players that I've played with, obviously, who know what it's like to be in the grind, that's the best part.
If you could hear her, understand her through those crocodile tears, John.
Well, and by changing the world forever, she meant at least until the expiration of the collective bargaining agreement. Right?
That's exactly right. This is such an easy team to root against. And I didn't watch the games to root against Team USA. I just didn't care. I just literally did not watch a minute and did not care. And now they've lost, and Megan Rapinoe's athletic career is over. And who knows? She may run for office. No, don't laugh. do not. She may run. She could be president. She may run as a Democrat for president. What you just watch.
What are we talking about?
I mean, if that guy can be in there, anything's possible.
I'm sure SAG-AFTRA could use her help.
Well, they could too on the front lines. Yes, they could. Don't kid yourself. She's not going anywhere. But at least for now, we don't have to listen to the preachiness from the soccer field. At least for now, it's a small win, but we'll take it as a win. And it is a reminder, while it's not probably the only reason Team USA lost, I'm not breaking down the game or anything like that. I do find it quite a coincidence that the year that Team USA was expected to win the whole thing after winning the last 2 World Cups, they don't get beyond the round of 16. And it's quite a coincidence that it happens to come the same year when they get a bulk of the men's money, which they did nothing to earn. 913-408-7710. That's the studio and the text line here on KCMO Talk Radio. Don't do drugs, kids. There's your Monday message from Bill O'Reilly, and I can confirm, having spent some time with Bill on his back patio last month, showed up for our, what did we meet at? Oh, I don't know, 11 o'clock or so. It was not mimosas on the back porch. Bill's like, you want a bottle of water? Gave me a nice Poland Spring, and that was it. Bill's not, partying there on a daily basis, living on the beach. He's a man who practices what he preaches. No drugs in the O'Reilly house, John. He's just a water bottle man.
Something tells me one hit for Bill, and we'd never see him again.
Forget the no spin news. It would be the no spin.
Go David Letterman, grow the beard, not be seen anywhere.
Could you imagine that? The no spin zone to the spin zone for Big Bad Bill. Oh, goodness. All righty. So we are entering, of course, think about it. It's 15 months away, but it's not as far as it might appear to be. So on Friday, the jobs report came out, the latest jobs report, with the election 15 months away. Joe Biden likely running for re-election, believe it or not. And there was real spin from the administration trying to convince the American people that, boy, this Bidenomics thing is working great. Now, the jobs numbers came in slightly below expectations. The unemployment rate came down to 3.5%. You might think that's good. I'd rather have a higher unemployment right now, not because I want to see people who are employed out of work, but a higher unemployment in this climate would imply more people are looking for work. With this record low unemployment or near record low unemployment, a lot of that is driven by the fact that people who should be looking for work are not looking for work. And once you're not looking for work after a certain number of months, you are considered out of the labor force, so you don't count against the unemployment. But we know that there are millions of able-bodied men, especially, who are not working, 25, 54. And it's not like they're helping out with the kids at home. These are mostly single, able-bodied men who are out of the labor force. It's a crisis. It's a social crisis that we have in this country. But over the weekend, what you heard, and on Friday after the jobs report came out, what you heard a lot of was, the economy's humming, everything is great, life is good. And that's simply not what the American people are buying. They're not buying it. New polling suggests 74% of Americans say Bidenomics, as it's being coined, is doing them no good. Yet here's the campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, on MSNBC over the weekend.
And I think voters are really starting to feel the economic impacts that this administration has set forward. The president has recently talked about it in the context of Bidenomics.
Yeah, you guys coined a phrase. I mean, how crazy is that? You attached the guy's name to economic policies that the majority of the American people in poll after poll after poll don't think is doing them any good. And you guys double down on it and you attach the guy's name to it. It doesn't make any sense. It'd be one thing if the polling shows that people thought the economy was strong and people liked where the economy was at. But despite what they tell you, despite the fact that they pee on your leg and tell you it's raining, that's not actually how the American people feel. And that is, I mean, you know, the polls may vary in terms of how much they dislike the current economic climate, but there's not a credible poll that I've seen that suggests the majority of the American people feel like the economy's in a good place. That's just not true. There's nothing to back that up. So then they come out and they decide, you know what? Boy, we haven't thought of this yet. Let's name this whole economic plan Bidenomics. Really? You sure you guys want to do that? Yeah, we want to do that. Okay. Well, you see gas prices are going up once again. My goodness, up 16 cents last week, up nearly 30 cents over the last month, $3.82 a gallon. I mean, that's not going to help the cause either. When we get the next inflation numbers, we'll have to keep an eye on that because that's obviously a big driver for when we see price increases. It oftentimes gets tied back to energy. Noon tomorrow here in town, VIP fundraiser with Ron DeSantis, $6,600 per attendee. Couples admission, $13,200. And if you're on a budget and you just want to get lunch, that'll cost you $3,300. And $6,600 per couple. Once again, that's just for lunch. Geesh, oh gosh, unbelievable. So don't have a location on that, but we do know that's happening tomorrow. Now, Ron DeSantis' campaign is in free fall. There's no nice way to spin it. It's not looking good for the guy. 6 months ago, he was, in trailing Trump by single digits in most polls. And now most polls have him down 25, 30, 35 points. It's just, he's not even in the ballpark. And there was a story here from Newsweek over the weekend. He was up in Iowa, obviously, trying to get some traction up there. And these pictures are embarrassing. I mean, he's not filling some of these small rooms. This was in Cedar Falls. I'm looking at this photo. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's 25, 35 people there, and 10 of them are press people. I'm seeing a handful of cameras. So it's like the guy is losing steam, and he's losing steam fast. I don't know and have the details behind why he's coming to Kansas City. We've reached out to a couple people to try to get him on the show, and unfortunately it's not working thus far. I guess there's still 24 hours to get it done, but it's not working thus far, and I'm not quite sure why. But either way, it's like, come on, this guy should be doing everything and anything he can do to get some attention, to get in front of people, to turn around the image that has led to him losing by 30 points in a lot of these polls over the last, 2 months or so. And I want to like the guy. I mean, some of you insist I'm in his back pocket. You've told me that for 6 months. It's not true, but you've tried to tell me that, right? So, but I'm also going to call it like it is. He's done a terrible job since he launched his campaign. And the people that he's allowed to run the show have completely misguided him. And there's a lot of people involved in his campaign who have run a lot of the local campaigns that have also, unfortunately, went belly up for one reason or another. So, but once again, I want to like the guy. I think that the job he's done in Florida has been incredible. And the proof is in the pudding in terms of how many people are moving to Florida, what the economy is like in Florida, standing up for parents. All those things have been outstanding. But he came out of the gates and he tried to go to Trump's right on the culture war stuff. And while I agree with him on that, it's been a total dud. A total dud. I mean, people are looking for help right now, economically speaking. They have concern about the world stage, what is happening in places like Russia, Ukraine, China, Mexico. That leads into our southern border. And he really never addressed any of that out of the gates. And that's where the failures have been. So I don't know who's showing up tomorrow, but I'll tell you right now, I've not like people have been texting me, hey, Pete, I'm going out tomorrow. It's going to be great. You should come on. No, I'm not hearing a lot of that at all. Meantime, this also came out on the DeSantis campaign. His wife, Casey, is going to sit down with NBC News in her first network interview. I mean,
nobody cares.
Seriously. You're the candidate. Whether it's Bill Clinton running alongside Hillary or it's Casey running alongside Ron, Casey seems like a great asset. She actually seems more media savvy than he does. She used to work in media, by the way. I think she was at the Golf Channel. But who cares? I have never voted for somebody in any election based on their spouse. Never once have I done it. And I think she's an asset for him. I really do. I think having Casey at the events is great. But having her do sit-down interviews with NBC News and expecting that to turn things around, I mean, they are just grasping at straws. 913-408-7710. Let's go to the phones. John is on KCMO. John, good morning.
Hey, Pete, how you doing, brother?
All right. Are you going to be there tomorrow?
No, I'm raising 3 kids on my own.
Okay. So a $3,300 lunch is not in the cards for you. Okay. So give me the goods on DeSantis then.
Maybe in a couple of years. Pretty much, I'm officially working for the 2024 Kansas for Ron DeSantis. We're kind of in a moot point right now. The simple fact is, we had the debate in a couple weeks where after that, a couple shenanigans like hopefully Pence and Chris Christie were going to fall off. Then especially since we're a republic, we're not a democracy. So if we were a democracy, Hillary Clinton would have won 2016 and Al Gore would have won 2000, the popular vote. But what matters is Iowa. Once Iowa happens, more of the lower-end candidates are going to fall because the money is not going to be there. And then that's when all the voting is going to go on between – it's going to be turned into a two-man race between Ron and Donald Trump. So it's a matter of just dealing with the stagnation right now and trying to get through all this because, I mean, it's part of the long-term ball game.
So you're still, long and short, you're still high on the campaign's potential going forward.
Oh, yeah. I'm Donald Trump being a former Democrat and not firing Fauci, I am totally on Ron DeSantis' campaign team right now.
But you think you think he can still pull it off?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, The other thing, too, is if something happens to Joe Biden, he winds up in a hospice care or something like that. Hopefully not, but that's Donald Trump's leg to stand on. Plus, the simple fact is, who's the easiest candidate for the Democrats to beat? That's Donald Trump. Once people start waking up to this, guess what? It's game over.
All right. Well, John, keep us posted. Thanks so much. 913-408-7710. I understand, you go one state at a time, but got to start getting some traction somewhere. News coming up in 2 minutes, and then we've got a message for the Kansas City business community. They have got to stand up for something. We'll get to it all coming up. Kansas City business community, do yourself a favor, especially if you are a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Get on them to get their heads out of the sand and start, frankly, calling out the people in charge of this city. By now, if you haven't seen, the highlights, unfortunately, over the weekend in the news cycle were all tied to violence, sad to say. It was a very violent weekend in Kansas City and surrounds. You had 4 guys shot at 16th and Grand, 11:30 on Saturday night. And that night, there was an event at T-Mobile Center. Some of you might have been there. There was the PBR, the rodeo event on Saturday night. Now, I know it was early because I thought about taking Claire to it. I think it was at 6:45.
Yep.
So it was an early event. I know, most people weren't going to be piling out after that, but I love, if I'm going to T-Mobile, I park in that area. And maybe you go to the event, let's say, and then you go to Power and Light, you have a couple of drinks, maybe you eat a late dinner, whatever it might be, and you're getting out to your car, 11:30 at night, and boom, 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 you got 4 guys shot, 15th and Grand, 11:30 on Saturday night. Then you fast forward to what happened on the other side of state line. You had a suspect killed, and a cop is in critical condition. A Fairway police officer is in critical condition after exchanging gunfire yesterday morning at a Quick Trip in Mission. 7:30 on a Sunday in Mission at a Quick Trip. Not exactly where you expect to be dodging bullets as you wake up before the kids and head out and get your cup of coffee. Oh, all right, kids are still sleeping. I'll go Quick Trip, fill up the tank, grab a cup of Joe, and be on with my day. Yep, boom, 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 boom. Yep, right at a Quick Trip in Mission. And then last night, 5:45 in the Crossroads, 20th and Main, you had a knife fight break out. Yeah, cutting incident take place that resulted in one person dying. And the Kansas City, as we trend towards a record year for homicides in Kansas City, and now we start to see the violence permeate parts of town that typically don't have the violence, like Power and Light and Crossroads, and now skip across state line. The greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce has got to have a voice. The business community needs to stand up and tell this city council to do everything it can do to fund its law enforcement, get cops back on the streets, stop with these, nonsense ordinances to try to curb the sales of ammunition to young people when it's already a federal law that you can't buy ammunition as a minor. Tell them to stop with the dog and pony shows and get this thing back on track. And stop letting the city council be bailed out by the whole, well, we don't even control the police department. If only we had local control, everything would be fine. If you are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, call them up. And Joe Reardon's been on the show. He's the president. I'm going to invite him on tomorrow. He's a good guy. He's, for the most part, a straight shooter. But they've got to step their act up. I mean, how many businesses, by the way, right outside of 15th and Grand, 20th and Main in the Crossroads, have people getting killed outside their businesses over the weekend? Over in Mission, at a Quick Trip, where you've got shootouts taking place. When you have the largest municipality that cannot control crime, eventually it's not going to stay in the little convenient areas of town where we typically think of the homicides taking place. Eventually, it's going to go to other places. And the fecklessness of the chamber hasn't been stunning, but it's even been surprising to me. But let's not forget, this chamber did last year, the Chamber of Commerce took a public position opposing an amendment to the Missouri Constitution that would have required, and did require, and by the way, passed, Kansas City to increase how much it spends on the police department. The measure known as Amendment 4 passed last year that increased the minimum threshold of police spending in this town from 20 to 25% of the general revenue. The chamber opposed that measure. Why? I don't know. I don't understand. But they opposed that measure last year. Thankfully, the people of Missouri didn't listen to the Kansas City Chamber. But this chamber, and there are many people in this audience who are members, who have businesses that are members of the chamber. This crime issue is going to hurt your business. If you own your property, if you own your small business, the physical location of your small business, and you're downtown in the Crossroads, if crime keeps going up, the value of that property will potentially go down. Your business will get hurt. If you have a business that's like a restaurant or a bar, and you want people to show up. Well, if I've got people getting into knife fights and dying at 5:45 in the afternoon on a Sunday at 20th and Main, guess where I'm not going? I've got too many options to go there, right? If you're someone who's going out for an early dinner, you're looking to have a couple of drinks and whatever you want to do, you've got options. You don't have to go out to 20th and Main. You don't have to choose to go downtown to Power and Light for your night out. You don't have to do it. Or, by the way, if you do go to an event at T-Mobile, instead of staying out a little bit, hopping across the street, grabbing a drink, grabbing something to eat, instead of doing that, what are you going to do? I'm going home. Or I'll get in the car and I'll go to a bar or get something to eat closer to home. I'm not staying here too late. What does that do? That decreases, obviously, the revenues, the sales taxes, and everything else for Kansas City, Missouri. And it hurts the businesses in that part of town. So instead of hoping that the chamber is going to do something and open its mouth, if you're a chamber member, you're the one who should be rattling cages. And you should be telling your fellow chamber members to start rattling cages and to stand up and speak up and stop letting the people in charge point the finger at Jeff City and guns and whatever other lame ordinances they're trying to pass that do absolutely nothing. You can be the difference. If you start pressuring the chamber and the chamber finally decides it's going to say something on behalf of its members and businesses about the crime being completely out of control and now happening in parts of town that have far more businesses, well, guess what? Maybe that'll make a difference. Instead, the last time we heard anything from the chamber when it came to violent crime in Kansas City was when they opposed the amendment to the Constitution to get the police not even more funding, but just solidify their funding at 25%. Because remember, the funding for the police department was at like 24.7%. The amendment increased it to 25%. It basically held it where it was. It prevented a defunding of the police by the city council. And for some reason, the chamber's official position was that's a bad idea. And I don't know why. And then, of course, you've got the Royals angle, as the Royals consider downtown Kansas City and North KC. And, you know, you've got two people killed. And it's not like these killings were happening at 3 a.m. One at 5:30 in the afternoon in the Crossroads, the other at 11:30 at night. That could easily be when a baseball game lets out. An extra inning baseball game, but still a baseball game. And you've got Power and Light and Crossroads. And you've had a couple of killings take place in the East Village over the last few weeks where the new ballpark could be. If I'm John Sherman, you know what I did over the weekend? I made a call to whoever's in charge of North KC and that operation, and I put down my deposit. We're moving forward. We're going north. We cannot justify a $2 billion investment right now in downtown. We just can't do it. You'd have to be insane to see where this thing has trended over the last 3.5 years, see the decision-making, see what they valued, see where they've spent their money, and say, you know what, I want to invest $2 billion in the East Village. You'd have to be nuts to do that right now. But by the way, as I've noted, I think it works for everybody. I think for Jackson County and Kansas City, it's in large part better for them. They can focus on the Chiefs and give the Chiefs what they want. And the Chiefs, being where they are at the Truman Sports Complex, are mostly isolated from a lot of the crime and nonsense that's taking place around town. So they don't have to really worry about it. They get what they want. But baseball, if you want to be in that community environment and you want to be able to, you know, have the restaurants and the bars and the walkability, what are you doing? 913-408-7710. As we hit 8:44 on a Monday on KCMO Talk Radio, I would love to see you, many of you who are members of the Greater KC Chamber, start rattling those cages. You know, you're paying your dues, right? Have your voice heard. 913-408-7710, 844, Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM, 103.7 FM, plus your smartphone and smart speaker. You know, I'm curious. This audience has a lot of options. This audience is, for the most part, not young, single, and ready to mingle. This audience, I don't want to make any assumptions, but we see the data on who this audience is, right? This audience is wanting to spend money. This audience has money to spend. This audience likes to go out to nice restaurants, buy nice vehicles. This audience is, you know, for the most part, not coming out of college and looking to leech off a mom. And if they are coming out of college, well, they're off and running as an engineer, right? Or something like that. That's who this audience is. So I asked this, and I bring this up because of the conversation we were just having regarding homicides taking place in parts of Kansas City and the surrounding area where typically violence does not happen. 20th and Main, 15th and Grand, between 6 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. And then, of course, a quick trip in Mission yesterday where officers in critical condition. But this is the kind of stuff we have on the text line, and I want to hear from you at 913-408-7710. Pete, me, my friends, and family make all of our going out plans in any part of those areas to be out by 5 p.m. Sad, but our safety trumps all of it. You know, I used to live down at 6th and Broadway. I never had a problem. Never thought twice of it. It was 5.5, 6 years ago now, but we had a very good experience. And I'll tell you what, if that was now, I never. You know, we had our first child and lived there for, gosh, I guess we had Claire there for 4 or 5 months. You know, we'd walk around in the stroller. It was great. Enjoyed it. Went up to River Market. I never thought twice about any of that stuff. Now, I wouldn't do it. I just couldn't. Not when you're seeing people, you know, cutting each other to death at 5:30 on a Sunday in the crossroads. Scott's in Northeast Kansas City. Hey, Scott, you're on KCMO. What's up?
Yeah, something that drives people crazy about me is I tend to bring up things from the past to talk about issues going on in the present and maybe a means of looking into the future. I am bringing up something from the past where in a lovely little place called Brookside, late 1990s, and it was a beautiful early spring day. It's a very happy place there in the late 1990s, Brookside. It's idyllic. It's lovely. Everybody votes for Clinton. And all of a sudden from east of Troost rolled a rolling car-to-car automatic pistol fight, rolling in the right dead center of Brookside. Everybody's running, jumping, hiding behind cars. Some people are shocked, and they don't know what to do. They've never seen anything like this. And bullets and shell casings are flying everywhere. People are rattled. The mayor is contacted, and yet nothing really seemed to happen. And since then, and in places, and it has happened before, in the plaza, downtown, it happens. And people vote the same way. They do the same things. And it seems to be voting that makes it worse and worse. The only thing you have is Kathy Jolly, city council member, going to the state and asking for a comprehensive handgun ban, which they say, we can't.
That's what they
do
did.
that.
Scott, you're right. And not only, voting one way, but not even voting. I mean, what do we have, 13% turnout? Unbelievable. It was that bad in this past election. And the plaza's dead. I mean, I don't see how it recovers. They're having all these conversations. Oh, we're going to bring the plaza back by preventing cars from driving down the street. No, I don't think that's really your problem, right? We're going to block it off and make it just a walkable part of the city. I mean, Mike, you want to talk about overlooking the core issues here. How about, situations when the people in charge are telling business owners like Shake Shack to hire private security if you got a problem? What the hell am I paying you taxes for then? Why am I paying the city taxes when you guys tell me, hey, if I got a problem with numbskulls coming in and, causing trouble, instead of calling the police, all I got to do is hire my own private security. Then what am I paying you guys for? And what the heck am I doing here? But don't worry, we might shut down the street to cars. That'll do the trick. We'll get the streetcar down here, too, while we're at it. Of course, the streetcar, if you didn't know, was out of commission for 3 hours last night because of the cutting that resulted in one person dying at 20th and Main right along the streetcar line. So the streetcar wasn't even working. So it's kind of tough to have the streetcar operating and selling that to people when it may not work because people are getting cut to death on the side of the road next to the streetcar. I mean, it's completely out of control. and you have nothing but silence. How about some new city council members trying to make an impression? Why aren't they stepping up to the plate this morning? I'll go through their social media accounts again, but I'm not hearing a lot from them. Are you? Be a chance to make a statement saying enough's enough. No. Instead, they're voting on ordinances like banning minors from buying ammunition, which is already a federal law. Unbelievable. 913-408-7710. That's also the text line here on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. Pete, this all ties back to Jackson County. You haven't mentioned the name Gene Peters Baker. Well, you're right. I hadn't mentioned the name Gene Peters Baker yet. But, yeah, I mentioned that name so much on this show, I figured I would leave the obvious out. But, of course, when you have a prosecutor who is not going to prosecute violent criminals, this is in part what you get. This is what ends up happening when you don't have prosecutors who would do the work that needs to be done. Because then those very same people that are committing crimes will feel emboldened to commit crimes in other parts of town or even jump across state line. Now, this is an interesting question on the text line I got here. Pete, what makes you think North KC would be any better? Someone in law enforcement said this to me last night. They said, for some reason, that river is still a dividing line. For some reason, criminals are still more likely to jump across state line than they are to go north. And that's part of the conversation, unfortunately. Larry is on KCMO. What's up, Larry?
I just wonder what would be the solution if, let's say, we didn't have a Democratic-based situation in Kansas City, Missouri, and it was Republicans. What could the Republicans do to eliminate the crime problem?
What could they do? Well, the first thing that you would do, Larry, is you would have a massive push to hire 300 cops, which is what they're short. You would do anything and everything. You would increase the budget if you have to get 300 cops hired. Then you would do everything in your power to get a better prosecutor elected to office in Jackson County than what you have. Then you would get a new jail, Larry, which Kansas City, Missouri does not presently have. That's 1, 2, 3 out of the gates. That's what I'd be doing, Larry. How's that sound?
Well, it sounds idealistic. I mean, apparently you cannot get anybody to sign up to be. They're having a hell of a time with recruiting of policemen. Mm-hmm. And is there a budget for 300 more policemen? And in my view, if we had 1,000 more policemen, you cannot prevent the kind of killing that's going on. That's an individual matter.
Well,
it's a sociological problem.
Here's the thing. You're only focused on one of the things I said, Larry. I gave you 3 that in conjunction can certainly improve the situation. Yes or no in 15 seconds?
No. I think when people are I think when you're hell-bent on doing something, or you're so loose with your life that if somebody disrespects you, you just kill them.
Yes, but Larry, you got to figure out a way to deter it, and those 3 things will help do it.